record. We are live and ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, June 27th, 2022. The time is 6:04 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Nathan?
Here.
Sweat?
Here.
Rojas?
Here.
Swick?
Here.
Peyton?
Here.
And Kennedy is running a little bit late and he'll be here. So currently we have 5 of 6 council members present and we do have a quorum. And if Heidi or Rachel, one of you could lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Excused absences. At the moment, we have none. Agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda, Mayor.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve tonight's agenda with a second by Sweat. Any further discussion before we vote on the agenda approval? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on tonight's, on the motion to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor, Nathan?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5 with 1 absent. 5-0 with 1 absent. Okay, item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. The council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of minutes of the regular meeting, May 9th, 2022, and those are in the laydown. And then also the meetings of the regular meeting for June 13th, 2022, and those are also in the laydown.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may interrupt real quick, I
Yeah, you
apologize
bet.
that the minutes of the regular meeting, June 13th, did not make it into the laydown. So I'll make a note of that in the minutes that they will be presented at the next meeting, but May 9th is in the laydown.
Okay, yeah, I didn't catch that when I went through that earlier. Okay, so strike the second line item there for the June 13th. Those will be at the next meeting. So we only have the minutes for the regular meeting, May 9th, in tonight's consent agenda. Item 2 under the consent agenda consists of 1 ordinance for introduction. That's ordinance 23-01. An ordinance to the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code 12.040.020, purpose 12.040.040, management of the fund, and 12.040.050, income and distribution regarding the Seldovia Permanent Fund. This was recommended for public hearing on July 11th. And this will be found on page 7 of your regular packet. And then the third section of the consent agenda tonight consists of 4 resolutions. The first one is resolution 22-51, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia authorizing the City of Seldovia to enter into a payment contract for the FY 2023 notice of deposit contribution and any outstanding balance, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. That is found on page 18 of your regular packet. The second resolution is resolution 22-52, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia approving the alternate method of system supervision plan for Seldovia's water and wastewater utility systems, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the appropriate documents. That's found on page 23 of your packet. The third resolution on tonight's consent agenda is Resolution 22-53, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia adopting an equal employment opportunity / affirmative action policy. This is found on page 38 of your packet. And then the final fourth resolution tonight is Resolution 22-54, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia concerning fair housing. And that'll be found on page 39 of your packet. So we have, in summary, we have one set of minutes under section 1. We have one ordinance for introduction under section 2, and we have 4 resolutions for approval under section 3 resolutions. So that is tonight's consent agenda. And would any member at this time like to have any item removed to discuss separately? Okay, I don't see that anyone's asking for that. So I will make a note that Council Member Kennedy has joined us. So we have a full council that will be voting on the consent agenda. So if I can get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. All right, and we have a second. Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda by Payton. We have a second by Rojas. Any further discussion before we vote on tonight's consent agenda? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on item E, consent agenda approval. All those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Payton.
Aye.
Okay, tonight's consent agenda is approved 6-0. Appreciate that. Item F, mayoral proclamations, and these are going to be found on page 9 and 10 of your laydown. And the first one is going to be proclamation 22-06 honoring Andrew Maddox and Janelle Harris for their service to the Seldovia community as volunteer fire chief and deputy fire chief. And I will read those here in just a second. Heidi, you said Andrew was in attendance?
He is, Mr. Mayor, and I did just share with him a copy of the proclamation, but if you'd like, we can have him stand up and have you read it to him, however you guys would like to proceed.
He can stand or sit, either one, but I'll go ahead and read it real quick. So this will be a proclamation honoring Fire Chief Andrew Maddox and Deputy Fire Chief Janelle Harris for their leadership and service to the Seldovia community. Whereas the City of Seldovia Volunteer Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department is committed to protecting lives and reducing suffering and property losses through pre-emergency public education and post-emergency response efforts. And whereas the department is dedicated to excellence and professionalism in all activities while striving to be flexible and innovative in meeting the needs of Seldovia community, the Seldovia community and the citizens served and protected by the department. And whereas response activities are provided by an all volunteer membership. And whereas Fire Chief Andrew Maddox and Deputy Fire Chief Janelle Harris have led the department since 2017. And whereas the City of Seldovia would like to thank Mr. Maddox and Ms. Harris for their leadership, dedication, and volunteerism within the fire department. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor of the City of Seldovia, on behalf of the entire City Council and the citizens of Seldovia, honors and thanks Fire Chief Andrew Maddox and Deputy Fire Chief Janelle Harris for their leadership and service to the Seldovia community.
Rachel's taking a quick photo.
Okay. All right, Andrew, thank you. We appreciate all your efforts. much appreciated and well deserved for myself and the entire council. So thank you for your efforts and all your time and dedication to the department. We much appreciate it, and so does the entire community.
Thank you, guys. And online, so thanks for me. And you too.
He does pass along his thanks for him and Janelle.
All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, the second proclamation we have tonight is, and this will be found on page 10. This is going to be proclamation 22-07, honoring the city of Soldovia's 60th anniversary as a first-class city. And I will go ahead. Please. Just a second here.
Brief pause, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, what do we got?
Okay, we're back to it.
Okay, we good?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Okay, this will be a proclamation honoring the city of Soldovia's 60th anniversary as a first-class city. Whereas on May 7th, 1945, the city of Soldovia was originally incorporated as a second-class city led by a board of trustees and then Mayor Simon Josephson. And whereas as a result of a growing population and booming industries, becoming a first-class city was a step the community supported. On September 20th, 1962, the city of Soldovia was officially incorporated as a first-class city, with Jack English serving as mayor and Elaine Giles serving as city clerk. And whereas 2022 marks the city's 60th anniversary as a first-class city, and whereas it is the mission of the city of Soldovia to provide leadership and cost-effective services in support of a stable economy, a healthy and safe community, and a quality lifestyle respectful of the natural environment and community character while promoting maximum citizen participation in local governments. And whereas it is an honor of the Soldovia City Council and city staff to serve the citizens of Soldovia by convening people to focus on community problem solving and opportunities for the present and future generations of Soldovia while providing a variety of services, including water and wastewater utilities, a harbor and marine infrastructure, law enforcement, maintenance of public facilities and roads, and administration. And whereas the city of Soldovia would like to thank its citizens and community partners for your support over the past 60 years as we work together to create a resilient, sustainable future for Soldovia. The key to the city event, to be held on July 3rd, 2022, will be a symbolic testament to everything we have accomplished together as we look forward to the next 60 years to come. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor of the city of Soldovia, on behalf of the entire city council and its citizens, honors the city of Soldovia's 60th anniversary as a first-class city in celebration of this municipal milestone. All right, well, that is exciting. It's an exciting time in our history, and we are looking forward to this year's Independence Day celebration along to coincide with our city's 60th anniversary. So looking forward to that. We've got a few dignitaries that'll be in town. We've got a bunch of past mayors that'll be in town, and then just looking forward to everybody enjoying themselves and having a good, safe celebration this year. So, and I don't know if anyone else has any additional remarks they'd like to make. Okay, we will we'll get that signed and then get that entered into the record as well. We'll move on to item G, public presentation prior notice. We have none. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Heidi, do we have anybody from the public that wishes to speak this evening?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear, Laurel.
All right, thank you. We'll just want to recap that we just finished a wonderful Soldovia Summer Solstice Music Festival weekend with Higgies and Plein Air and an extension of the daily watercolor workshop. So None of that would happen without the amazing work of all the volunteers, including City Council Member Rojas and others. And so just knowing what it takes, and that it also takes the help and support of the community businesses and agencies that are in the area to make all that happen. A really big thanks and shout out to everybody who brought that together, and the school district for allowing that space to be used to have the event back there once again. So that was fantastic. Also noticed that there was all types of medevacs over that weekend. And so a shout out to our EMS team that really put in the hours to take care of young and old alike when that was needed. During that same week, we were visited by Nick and Elaine Cantrell, who did used to live in Seldovia in 2018. And Nick worked at Seldovia Village Tribe as an IT staff member. And he had a heart to come back to Seldovia with a group of folks from his church in Virginia. And they worked on Seldovia Bible Chapel and brought it forward into the 21st century. They do still have the orange pews. Otherwise, now they've got monitors in there. And they also worked in the community by helping conduct a car wash in participation with middle schoolers in town. And they hosted a barbecue for elders in partnership with Seldovia Village Tribe also. So we're really appreciative of folks who come in and volunteer just for the benefit of this community and the life that we lead here. So super glad for that. With that, also want to recognize Hugh Smith, who just wrapped up 40 years of doing the maintenance of the ball field and the lawns at Susan B. English School. And you can tell he's not doing it anymore. So we're sure hopeful that it'll work out between some local folks to get out there and get that contract to mow those lawns. We definitely need it. Coming up, we've got coming home events starting on Thursday. We've got family bingo on the deck at Seldovia Village Tribe. Friday, community picnic out at Outside Beach. The pig is here. It's going to be delicious. Pig, salmon, all the food donated by Seldovia Village Tribe. Just show up with your appetite. And then on Saturday, we're going to have the all school reunion. So anybody who went to school in Seldovia, they're invited to come up to Susan B. English School and celebrate that time together. On Sunday, we've got the patriotic service at Seldovia Bible Chapel, followed by a potluck. And then, of course, the city's Key to the City presentation at the Gateway Pavilion. And later that day, we have live music and barbecue on the lawn between the Boardwalk Hotel's gift store and the Linwood Bar, weather permitting. Now, mind you, the cost of entrance for that barbecue is going to be a donation. And the Campbells will be getting the word out on what great project they want to put that money towards. So that's fantastic that they're bringing that to the community. That's all on Sunday. And then on Monday, of course, we have our traditional Independence Day celebration hosted by the chamber and all the other folks that are doing business and volunteering their time. And if you see Daisy Wheeler Rebecca out there on the street, she put in a lot of steps today. She's doing all the work to wrap that up and make it a great day for everybody. In the meantime, we're just going to blow the clouds away and plan on it being a really beautiful day for us to celebrate, right? Make it so. I need that to be a proclamation, Jeremiah. So I think it's going to be a great, great weekend, and we're really looking forward to it. And we sure do appreciate all the folks that work to make that happen. I did want to mention also last week, Seldovia had 2 separate weddings take place that were hosted in this community. So again, knowing all the businesses that are involved in making that happen, that's a great, great feature that this community is able to offer. So especially on sunny days. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Appreciate that. I'll just follow on a couple things. Yeah, just for everyone, we hosted one of those weddings ourselves and one of the receptions and stuff. And it's amazing to me what one event like that does. I mean, that just one wedding, they literally had just about everything in town booked out for that. And then the spinoff from that, the amount of people that, came over on the ferry or flew over or, paid to get here. And then, just all the spinoff eating and visiting and friends of friends. And yeah, it's amazing what just a little economic boost that is when you have an activity like that in town. And I know we have a number of those coming up here over the remainder of the summer. So looking forward to all those.
And Mayor, Mayor Campbell, the added bonus was the Kennecott Ferry being in town.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that was nice to see stuff coming and going. So that's definitely much needed on. We got to keep the pressure on that. So all right. Well, thank you, Laurel. Much appreciated. Yeah, and while you were talking, I pulled up my Windy app because I looked at that this morning and I was not very happy to see. So I'm
Come on.
hoping it's gonna change.
It's gonna change. It's gonna change.
Let's hope. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Laurel. Appreciate all of that. We're gonna move on. Let's see, Heidi. Anyone else?
I'm not seeing any more hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and move on to item I, committee and advisory board reports. And I believe we do not have any under item I tonight. Is that correct?
Correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Somehow we're losing your connection, Heidi. I'm not sure what was happening. We can barely hear you. Item J, administrative reports. The first one looks like tonight will be the finance report on page 41. That'll be of your regular packet. Nope, we're just getting garble.
Do we lose him?
I'm not sure. Rachel, can you say something? Test 1, 2, 3.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay, yeah, you're loud and clear. I don't know if somebody else was trying to talk, but we had some garble there. Okay. All right, so the finance report will be on page 41, and these are just written for this meeting, correct, Rachel?
Correct. And when we have the quarterly report, staff will be here to give a more comprehensive review of all the information that's been shared up until that time they attend the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, if anyone has any questions on the finance report, just feel free to ask.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I think there might be somebody listening in who's not muted.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. We've got, we're getting some background noise here. Harmony, did your kids get a hold of a microphone
Yeah.
or internet connection somewhere?
That'd be pretty miraculous considering. Considering this.
Are you still hearing it, Mr. Mayor?
I think it's stopped here.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on the finance report?
Yeah, I just have a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
So, the remote seller sales tax that was for the year was $21,000. Is that what that means?
Yes, as to date has been a little over 21,000, and in the month of June so far, we've received $6,379.
Pretty good. That's more than we ever had that's more than we had before. It's pretty good since we did that. Are able to collect, a bit of money from it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or comments on the finance report?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just have one add on to that. So it's going right now into the major maintenance fund. Why? Why is that happening?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Swick, that was something established prior to my arrival at the city, but I believe it was an administrative decision to take the remote seller sales tax and put it into AMLIP. And so the past couple budgets have had it allocated towards the general fund instead. So that's why we're moving it out of AMLIP, because it technically should be going into our general fund, which is held in Wells Fargo.
Oh, okay. So from now on, is it going to go into Wells Fargo, or do we need to keep doing this?
It should be directly going into the city.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Move on down to the chief of police report. That'll be found on page 44. That looks fairly short and sweet. Total of 16 calls. Looks like only one was outside the city. So
I have a question,
be
Mr. Mayor.
quiet. Yep, go ahead.
So there continues to be some sort of miscommunication with however it is that Chief Hawkins is, I'm sad that he's not here right now, communicating with people or how the city is. My understanding is that we have a contract with the troopers, and when someone calls 911, he is then dispatched out according to their discretion and our contract. So in recent history, there has been further miscommunication between Chief Hawkins and public regarding those procedures. Somebody asked him point blank, if I have an issue at my home, can I call you? And he said, no, call the troopers. Now, because I'm hearing this third hand, my assumption of the conversation is that he means is do not call me directly, as has happened in the past, call the troopers and I will then respond. But the public's perception of that statement is that it's a no, I won't respond to you, even because they live out the road. I know we've beat this over the head so many times, but I do know that there continues to be an angst in the public about this conversation. And when I run into it, I always say the same thing, call 911. It's the same procedure anywhere. Call 911 and the appropriate dispatch will happen. But I think Lane needs to specify that more clearly. Is that something, am I incorrect? Is there anything that I've stated thus far that's incorrect?
Through the mayor, thank you so much, Councilmember Payton. Something that's been on our list is to send out a briefing document. It was actually a great idea from SVT so that we could explain how the relationship works with the troopers, because there was a change and trying to be more aligned with the contract, because the Alaska State Troopers, or I should say not the troopers, Department of Public Safety has said in the past when the city asked to receive more funds as a result of providing service, that because we weren't following the contract, the perception was that that was probably a reason why we were not being denied an increase. So we've been trying to better follow that. And so I would say it's more of an administrative thing of working with the troopers as well as SVT, since it's outside of city limits, and Chief Hawkins to develop a document where it lays it out really clearly, because we don't want to be misinforming the public about how law enforcement happens in Soldovia. So I'm sorry to hear that that's still happening, and it's on our ever pressing top priority list to get that out.
Okay, well, just gonna hit the head a little harder. It is summertime. There's a lot more activity. There's a lot more things happening here that don't usually happen in the winter. And people do need to feel safe. And if we are receiving money from the state to provide this service, then we need to prioritize communicating with the general public and making sure that Klain understands that he needs to make sure his communication style is concise and direct, and that people aren't walking away with the misconception that they are not going to be protected and served. Everyone here around this podium has heard everything you just said. We all know it, but those calls happen in the middle of the night and it's the worst time and people are panicking, and we just need to make sure that we have a clear and direct protocol for the community. It's redundant. We all know this, but the community continues to misunderstand. So let's do that this week. Let's do something.
Absolutely. And there's a really great webpage on the city's website. If people want to read up more on the Seldovia Police Department, and on that webpage is the contract itself, so people can see the language. So if you just go to departments, you'll see police, and that has more an even more in-depth description of how law enforcement works in Seldovia, but not everyone's checking our website. So that's the briefing document too, to try and help explain the relationship more.
Print that and take a copy of it to Layla so that people coming through there have access to that. And the people working there have access to that. I mean, I know, again, Layla knows it, but we do have summer employees who don't know it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to follow up, make one comment on that too. And I'm not gonna pour fire on this, but I mean, what happens is here we have everyone knows the game of telephone, and then humans are inherently very selective hearers. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. And I'm not saying that, right, wrong, or indifferent, but I know this has been communicated, and it doesn't matter how hard we try. I'm not saying we shouldn't continue to try, but people are only going to hear what they want to hear. Some people are just not going to care, and others are not going to make the effort to go and try to find these resources to understand how it works. The relationship between the troopers and the police. So I know Clayton has made an effort to convey that. Maybe sometimes it's not conveyed clearly. I think he gets frustrated sometimes because he has to repeat himself, over and over. And it's been an educational piece for everyone, that lives either inside or outside, to mainly outside the city limits, when he has to try to explain that. So, but I think, yeah, the document, that guiding document, or, something that puts it in writing that, somebody could simply, email it, text it, repeat it, whatever, would be very clear to people. And then there would take, any ambiguity out of the conversation completely. So yeah, that's probably a good time to get that going.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
could I ask Harmony, are we talking about our actual constituents, or are we talking about people outside of the city limits making these complaints?
Both, and both are valid statements from either party, considering that they both fall within the service area of our police officer, albeit through different departments. Technically, if he crosses city limits, he's a state trooper, but we do have a contract with the state troopers, which gives him jurisdiction to respond if he is dispatched out. But because there's been this continual miscommunication and misunderstanding, and as the mayor has stated, a willingness to misunderstand, it continues to be a concern, and people, sounds like there have been a couple of instances where people were unsure whether or not they should or could call for police backup because they misunderstood this information. But again, all of us here this evening are sick of saying and hearing, because it seems pretty clear, but
I
people need
think
to be able
we,
to call 911 and feel like they're going to be protected.
I think we've been over double backwards to explain to people what our situation is. The police chief, as far as I can tell, is acting exactly within the structure of the contract.
Mhm.
I suggested when we first started getting into this that we have a central dispatch person, and
Mhm.
let's just get out of the decision-making situation ourselves. You call 911 and the 911 operator will either refer you to the troopers or refer you to our police department.
They already do that.
Huh?
They already do that.
Well, then,
But it's summertime now. We have a group of people who have come in who weren't here during the meetings that we held with the troopers and with city staff and here at these meetings, and it's not a bad time or a bad thing to just continue to put that information out into the public.
I agree in principle. I just feel that every time we go back to Klain with this same problem, we're just eroding away at his morale, and it's like we're not supporting him.
Right.
I'd like to see I don't know what the answer is to this. I think having a central dispatch and letting the dispatch make the decision about where the call goes is the only way out of this.
Mhm. Well, we do have that system in place. It does exist. It always has. I think maybe a claim just, stated, call 911 and I will be dispatched. Just, that's what he's trying to say. And that's my instinct that that's what he's saying. And the misconception doesn't lie at his door, but it is incumbent upon us to make sure that the public is aware of their options for service.
All right, well, I think if we get a document, that'll help out quite a bit. So Laurel, I see you got your hand up. You had a question?
Yes, so I'm also in agreement with the document and think where we can tell that Chief Hawkins is inclined to very precise communication, brief, and you see it in his reports. He's not going to provide you with a lengthy explanation on anything. He's going to be direct. I think what you stated that Chief Hawkins said was exactly what I understand, which is don't call him at home, call 911. And nothing in that to me indicated that that meant he would not respond. It just was the process. But with that document, if possible, Chief Hawkins having a stack of those available, so when people do ask those questions, he can say, okay, the basic gist is this, but this document explains it in all kinds of, layman's terms. And if you have further questions, please reach back out. And it's just coaching him along that line for sure. But the other thing is that it's very interesting that this particular area of service is the one that in many ways feels the most leans towards contentiousness in regards to who receives the service. And so if we think about people who are in an emergency and they have a fire or medical emergency, the boundaries don't exist in terms of are they a constituent or are they not a constituent? If there's a tsunami and we're trying to get the word out to people, those boundaries don't exist. So sometimes I get confused why we get into a conversation about boundaries and where people are located in regards to how we serve. So as long as you have that contract, all of this area is your service area, and we're all so very thankful for it. And so going forward, because it has been beaten by, with a stick a million times, going forward, can we drop that part of the conversation and just look at what the proactive choices are? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Laurel. All right, closing comments on that issue, and then we can move on. Yeah, I think we all agree that we get something rolling on that, and that will help out. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We got a lot to do here tonight still. J3 Harbor Masters Report, that's found on page 45. Looks like things are obviously ramping up at the harbor. Lots of boats. Appears a few more than normal. We got upcoming typical summer safety inspections with all the extinguishers. Going to start off with one of the vessels, the Guskimo, looking to get the first one of those out of there, and hopefully that process will go smooth. Kind of an update on some of the things that I know the city had their the barbecue and open house at the kiosk. That was a success. Looks like we do have our first tenant down there, so that's exciting. Got an update on the cemetery grant. Looks like everything's been purchased. I know I talked to Dean and Dale this weekend, and they were looking for the shed, and it did show up. So, and they've got a bunch of equipment, so they're working on getting that all put together and set up here while Dean's here for the next couple of weeks. So that was pretty good stuff. lots of harbor master training going on here, a number of classes and stuff. Then, of course, the no shortage of the ongoing maintenance list. So signage, paint, some of it's all short term that will get done, some of it's long term wish list. But lots of stuff going on, it looks like. So any questions on the harbor report?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I see that at the very end, we're talking about, does the harbor master just have one assistant, or does she have an assistant this summer?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rojas, it's just one at a time. So right now we have Liz Diamant as a harbor master assistant, as well as Jim Davis, and from time to time, Radsey as well.
Okay, how many hours do each of them do then?
Councilmember Rojas, I'm going to turn it over to Radsey to help with that question.
Okay, thank you.
Liz and Jim average about 20 hours a week. I basically fill in where needed
Okay, and they're open till 9 o'clock at night or 8?
until 8.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep, thank you, Vivian. Thank you, Radsey. Anyone else, questions or comments on the harbor report? Okay, appreciate that. Good detailed report, lots of information, good pictures. We'll move on to the Public Works Maintenance Report. That'll be found on page 50 of your packet. Ongoing projects here, the auction, boat launches, water and sewer facility, and lots of locates, typical, lots of summer stuff going on. I heard the auction was very successful, so that's good news. Completed projects, we got the boat launch, the MOB up, harbor MOB up, and then the water tanker revived for dust control work. Yeah, I saw the harbor tanker, so that's good news. And then I see the street sweeper hit town. I saw it was in use this morning, starting. So that will be a much welcomed thing. We've had a lot of people commenting on the gravel on our streets. So that will be nice to have all this up and done here soon. So got more lift station repairs in the works, and then facility repair procurement looks like, and then more water leaks to deal with at South Boardwalk and on Alder Street. So, and then one note, John Kuhn has left the maintenance team. They relocated, I believe, back down to Southeast, and then so we're back down to we've just got back to 2, correct?
Correct, Mayor. We have 2 public works operators, and we do have a job posting. It's a temporary seasonal position for 10 hours because Johnny Gruber is budgeted for 29.5 and is only working, now is working about that amount of time, but would like to go down to 20. So that leaves a gap for the city to bring on another person to help with public works related activities.
Okay, sounds good.
So please help us recruit.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the maintenance report?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I know in one of the former meetings, I had asked for a list of the equipment and stuff, the stuff that was going to be sold at the auction. And I'm just wondering if there's anything put together as far as how much proceeds were made from the auction, what sold, what did not, that kind of thing.
So through the mayor, yes, we have sold not everything that was on the list, but a good deal. And we budgeted through the amended FY22 budget, making $750, and we made over $7,000 through the sale. So we have a list of everything that sold, and then everything that didn't sell, we're going to figure out either disposal, reorganizing it, hanging on to it for another sale, something of that sort, just to clean up the storage yard and other places where that equipment was kept.
Would it be possible for me to obtain a copy of that?
You bet. I'm not sure when that will be done.
That's fine. I
But you
just,
bet.
yeah, it doesn't have to happen in July. But I would like to see that. And in the future, I'd like to see the council have an opportunity to be able to review that stuff before it's done.
So through the mayor, Councilmember Kennedy, it was adopted through resolution and all the items were approved by council in that resolution and the inventory was provided to the council.
When
think-
was that- when
I
was
think it
that?
was a meeting that you had missed.
Okay. Okay, well, that explains it. So, okay, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions, comments on the maintenance report?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just a
Yeah,
comment.
go ahead. Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I like the very last paragraph. I'm glad to see that the reservoir is being watched and that I think with this crew we have, that they will be looking to make sure that we're not wasting water and that we are on top of our water consumption. And that if we do get in state of affairs, that we will notify the public. I brought that up last meeting. I don't know if something was discussed between the staff about information going out to the public at some point, but I'm glad to see it's in the report. It means Jordan is well aware of what's going on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, and that, I'll echo that. Yeah, that's nice to see that reservoir is topped off and the water going over the spillway. So that shows us right now, currently, even with as hot as it is, we're still in a fairly decent shape. So that's good news. And hopefully, with some upcoming rain and stuff, we won't have any problems this summer. So never know. It was an interesting one the last time it happened. So, and I think it's been just darn near as warm as 2019, or warmer. So that's good news. All right, let's go ahead and move on to item K, public hearings. Item K1, ordinance 22-15, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code 2.48.020 definitions, 2.48.010 declaration of public policy, 2.48.060 unlawful practices in the sale or rental of real property, 2.48.070 unlawful financing practices designated, 2.48.080 unlawful employment practices designated, 2.48.090 unlawful practices in places of public accommodation, 2.48.100 unlawful practices in educational institutions, and 2.48.110 unlawful practices by the municipality of Seldovia by including sexual orientation and gender expression and identity. And this was introduced on June 13th by Rojas, and this will be found on page 52 of your packet.
Mayor, our internet cut off a little bit while you were speaking.
Okay.
I'm thinking you just read the title and it's an ordinance that's sponsored by Councilmember Rojas. So just like her to open the ordinance for discussion with the council.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Manager. Yeah, this is ordinance 22-15 was a discussion that we had some time ago through the winter and maybe even last fall. It's just upgrading our ordinances to be more up to date and not out of date. And so I'm happy to see what was put together by the staff to make sure that we are in 2022 in the 21st century and that our ordinances show that. It's nothing that anybody should be afraid of or concerned about. It's just getting us where we should be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. All right, we'll go and open it up to council for discussion. Any questions or comments on ordinance 22-15?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
I've had quite a lot of response from constituents that don't feel that this is where we should be. I don't, laying aside my own thoughts about this, I wonder if we're actually representing the majority of the town here with some of the end up. And I have a question. One of the said something about unlawful activity in schools. What are we talking about there?
If you could, where is that, George? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
All right, let me see if I can find where what I was talking about.
Yeah, I'm looking for that too.
Anyway, maybe we can hear some more comments here while I try to dig that up.
If I may, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, you bet, Vivian.
Yeah, yeah, if you find that, George, let us know. But this is basically to make sure that the city of Philadelphia has on the record in our ordinance about not discriminating against anyone because of, and we had everything that should be in there: race, religion, age, sex, color, national origin, marital status, but we didn't have anything, and physical handicap. We didn't have anything about sexual orientation, gender expression, and identity. And these days, it's just it's a component that we need to put in there, just because that's where we are in this day and age. And it's just saying that we will not discriminate against, and we have it in writing. But that's all it is. It's just putting wording where it should be, and make sure that we're covering all of our bases. And when we didn't have it in there.
And council, that starts on line 181 of this ordinance, which is on page 55 of the packet.
Okay, yeah, line 184 says it is unlawful for a person operating or assisting in the operations of an educational institution. And all of the language stays the same. It's exactly the same, except for the addition of exactly what Vivian just said, the added language of the sexual orientation, gender expression, and identity. So, yeah, so I'll just chime in here too. I mean, under this ordinance, it doesn't, it's not, this is purely language. I mean, I think it's purely a cleanup is what we're looking at here, that, truly does, given all of the where we're at right now. Just basically it's an anti-discrimination language. Now I know that's a hot button issue in in the courts right now, and who knows what'll happen in the future here, but I personally don't have any objection to what we're doing here, looking at what we're trying to get cleaned up here. So I don't see that it does, there's any other changes in terms of educational. There's nothing strange here is what I'm saying. So not that I can see. It's purely anti-discrimination language. So, others may disagree with that, but that's my assessment of it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
I'd just like to express my support for this ordinance. It's, as Vivian said, it's just a reasonable piece of language that says that no matter who you are, where you come from, or what you're doing, we support you so long as you are living within the boundaries of safe society. And I read through this ordinance both times it's been in our packet, and it's more than reasonable and almost a little bit shocking that it didn't already exist. So thank you, Rojas, for bringing this to our attention.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
I couldn't find line 184. Mine, I don't have any numbers that high as far as lines go. On page 53.
Oh, go to 50. 55.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
Oh,
it's
mine
the,
says
the
50.
line number. Yeah, line number 180. It starts at 181 and then it goes on there.
Okay, I don't see any line numbers past 100, so.
It's the section
Anyway.
starting section 8.
How about in section 3? Amending section 2.48, removing language and strike out, adding language bold underline. 2.48010, declaration of public policy. The public policy of Seldovia is declared to be equal opportunity for all persons. City of Seldovia finds that invidious discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodation, education, and finance practices. What are we talking about? Discrimination in education? What does that mean? I don't really have a problem with anything else. That stuck out to me.
It protects people who are enrolled in our system or who apply for a position in our school from being discriminated against under any of the titles here mentioned. So it's not our position to dictate what happens at the school. It's our position to provide a language for them to fall back on if for some reason we have somebody in administrative staff who is barring somebody from employment or from enrolling based off any of the things listed here.
Okay, so if a physical boy dresses as a girl and goes in the girl's bathroom and assaults a girl in there, is that?
Well, we
Where
don't
does that
have
fit
any
in?
jurisdiction over something, over any type of assault. And we also don't have jurisdiction in this language here to allow that type of interaction at this time. This is not us taking a stand on bathrooms. It's us taking a stand as a city to provide a safety net for people who have different gender expression from ourselves. Or, I'm a female, that's how I identify, but I wouldn't choose to discriminate against somebody who looks like me but identifies as a boy. But it's not my place.
We've seen this very thing happen in this country and other places. We've also seen people with religious reservations about these sorts of situations be forced to bake cakes or arrange flowers or whatnot under penalty of suit. I worry that this puts us in a position to have to deal with stuff we maybe shouldn't have to deal with. And I'm expressing views of many of my fellow citizens here.
You're supposed to do that.
Okay, thank you, George. Anyone else, questions or comments from council on the ordinance? Okay, I'll just chime in here real quick too on that. I mean, I think the way this is written and the way the sentences are structured, George, I completely understand what you're saying. And there are certain things in my life that I also have issues with. But I don't think in this case, I mean, being this type of ordinance and this type of language, the words, when you look at the words, where are we at here? Education in that, I mean, that is merely, referencing another sector in this paragraph. It's referencing another sector within our, within our city and our public makeup. I don't think it infers anything beyond that. That's the simple word: education, financing practices, employment, housing, public accommodations. So I think it's definitely outside of the type of issues that you're raising. And I think I agree with Harmony. There are certain things here that we we're not going to have control over, and some things that we certainly might have an opinion on, that whether legally justified or not. I mean, this gets super, super sticky. So, but I think in this case, I think we're generally pretty safe where we're headed with this. So again, that's just my interpretation of it. And I can understand that, you know, some people in public may not be comfortable with the language. So, all right. Anyone else before we go to public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may just make one point, please, or just.
Yeah, you bet, Vivian. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just everything that's in this ordinance has been in this ordinance. We're just adding the 3 new components of not discriminating against the 3 issues that we've written down here. And I think we're putting the city in a better position in that we're putting it in our ordinance. So at some time, somebody can't come back to the city and wonder, why didn't they not have no discrimination towards sexual orientation, gender expression, identity? So I think we're protecting ourselves and people. And again, I agree with you, Mayor, and Harmony, that the wording, the language is just improving what we have, I believe. And it's not taking us in a direction that people are fearful of. As time goes on, we'll see how it goes. But I believe for the city of Seldovia, we need to upgrade where we are right now and move us into a better place. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. I appreciate the clarity on that. So that's good. Okay, anyone else before we go to public? Okay, Heidi, anyone from the public that wishes to comment on ordinance 22-15?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
All right, sounds good. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action on ordinance 22-15.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 22-15.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve ordinance 22-15 as written. We have a second by Sweat. Any further discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of ordinance 22-15. All those in favor, Nathan?
No.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Yes.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Peyton?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-1. Okay, thank you everyone for that. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get through. Yeah, I think anyone need a break? Are we still good here to keep going here for a few?
Mhm.
Okay. We'll go ahead and move on to item L, unfinished business. Looks like we have none. Item M, new business. Seldovia City Council 2022 priorities and a possible amendment. And this will be found on page 71 of your packet. And we'll go ahead and let the city manager take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So at the last council meeting, there was a request to have the council priorities for the calendar year 2022 brought up for discussion. And so I just wanted to provide council with an overview of where we're at in terms of those priorities. So there's a memo provided on page 71 in your packet that goes over basically where we're at, but I wanted to also pull up the chart that was included in the packet, which uses some blue stars to indicate where we've made progress. And I think it's redundant because basically everything has a star. So let me pull this up here. All right, so really quick, the priorities, there's been significant progress made on all of the large priorities, but there's still work to do on that topic. And more background on how progress has been made is detailed in that memo. So please let me know if you have any questions. You'll notice there's a really big star for the land use management plan, because that is something that the city has successfully been able to check off of its list for this year. A lot of these priorities of the council are ongoing, such as beautification and retaining small town charm, marketing and public outreach, advocacy on the ferry. And there's some really big projects also on here, one of which we haven't had a chance to get to yet, but it is on the list of working on the value added building with Mayor Campbell and Councilmember Rojas as the council champions for that. So this is just an overview of where we're at for the year. And towards the end of the memo on page 72 just says that in terms of amendments, I'm awaiting the council's direction on if and how the body would like to see an annexation incorporated into the priorities. And then I would also recommend that the council consider adding, it says securing a village police security officer, but that shouldn't have been there. It should say securing a village public safety officer to take the place as the medium priority number 1. I believe that having a VPSO in Soldovia would greatly assist the Soldovia Police Department and the Alaska State Troopers with law enforcement. So that ties in really beautifully with a comment that Councilmember Payton made earlier. And I think that it would be of great benefit to the community, because having one officer with remote support sometimes doesn't cut it, especially from a safety standpoint and an employee morale standpoint. So that is something that I've gotten support from the Alaska State Troopers and Soldovia Village Tribe on, is of having a VPSO here in Soldovia, and we can move forward with the state and getting a VPSO, but it's going to be a little bit of administrative demand. And so we're at basically 6 months of the year left. And so I'm recommending that take the place of the land use management plan, but I'm happy to answer any questions from the council and await your amendments. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to council for comments on our current list of priorities, and then and discussion of any possible amendments.
Mr. Mayor, if I could get,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
okay, yeah. If I could get some clarification about the village public security or VPSO, what kind of money are you talking about, and how would that be funded? Just so I have an idea of what the idea is here before we put it on a priority list.
You bet. Through the mayor, Councilmember Rojas, VPSOs are state funded. And so the state would, through partnership with a corporation or a nonprofit organization, allow the city, it wouldn't be, the VPSO would not be a city employee, but they would be placed here and supported by the Soldovia Police Department. So from the brief meetings that I had on this topic last year, the city could be a supporting agency, and that the VPSO can use the Soldovia Police Department office. And of course, they work in conjunction with the chief of police, but they would not be a city employee, and they would be funded by the state, either through the state itself or a federal grant, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I got a question for Rachel too. The acronym, what's the full name of that again?
Village Public Safety Officer.
Okay, so would he have the same authority or very similar authority to our current officer?
That would be something that we would have. So in order to initiate the process, that would be something that would be outlined with the Alaska State Troopers. So I know that they would offer support, and from my understanding, work in partnership with the Soldovia Police Department. But
Sounds interesting.
Chief Hawkins would not be a supervisor to that position. I believe it'd be the Alaska State Troopers in conjunction with the sponsoring organization of bringing the VPSO here to Soldovia. But that would be more clearly defined as we move through the administrative steps.
And then roles for that individual, would we have any input on maybe possibly what some of the future roles that person might be able to provide us with?
I think that, and when I say the Alaska State Troopers, I mean the Department of Public Safety, and these are great questions. I think that, of course, we would expect like a partnership, as we've been seeing
Right.
with our current position for law enforcement in Soldovia, similar partnership and working together to help the greater Soldovia area as well as the city of Soldovia.
Well, I'm ready to hear more.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, thank you, John. Go ahead, George.
What effect would the BPSO have on the contract with the state? Would there be funds, for example, diverted out of that to pay for the VPSO?
That through the mayor, that's a great question, Councilmember Nathan. And I haven't heard from the Alaska State Troopers or the Department of Public Safety that that would occur. So they're in support of, in addition to our current arrangement, Soldovia getting a VPSO. But I can ask that question as an additional follow-up, but I believe it's separate funding sources because VPSO is its own program within the state of Alaska.
I would just offer a comment on that too. I'm sure it's much more advantageous to already be able to share a space that the city provides, in lieu of any, reduction in our payments to us in terms of the money that we're currently getting. So, because I'm sure there still would be additional calls for service that, assist calls that our chief would have to make as well. And then, that works both ways. Hopefully if something, happened inside city limits, then there was be a backup as well for that. But yeah, for us to be able to already have an office, jail, holding cells and stuff in place, that would seem fairly attractive as a, not for the VPSO program to not have to fund, or, some sort of trade or some worked out in an MOA that that they wouldn't have to fully fund, if they were just coming in and setting up shop on their own. So I'm pretty sure we can work out all the finances to where we still where it makes sense for everybody.
And the VPSO would have police authority within the city?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, I'm not sure. I'm assuming yes. So much like the arrangement that we have to provide law enforcement services outside of city limits, I'm sure that could be something that would be arranged for inside of city limits. And I've heard Chief Hawkins talk about how if you are sanctioned by the state in order to provide law enforcement services, you can serve everywhere. So if there was an incident in Kenai and Chief Hawkins was there, he could assist, and that's authorized by being sanctioned as a police officer by the state of Alaska. Just as a police officer. There's a specific term for that, but I've been told it's kind of like a brotherhood where you come to assist if you're seeing that there's a situation and you can.
One more question, if I could.
Yep, go ahead.
All the VPSOs I saw, this was years ago, but flying to the villages around here, none of them were armed. And I understand there may be a new program. Would this person be armed?
So through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, you're asking really great questions of which I don't have the full background to, but I'm writing down these questions so that I can get back to you on them and the council. So if council elects this to be a priority, these are the questions that we can delve into deeper with the Department of Public Safety, as well as the sponsoring organization of having a VPSO here in Soldovia.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, that there was a bill that's been through a number of times, introduced a number of times in order. I don't think it was as simple as Department of Public Safety just saying you are now able to, be armed. I think there was a bill that had to go through the legislature to make that happen, and I'm pretty sure it's failed a few times, and it's been fairly controversial. So, but I'm not sure where it stands right now. I know it was in discussion again here just as recently as a couple of years ago. It was, and I think it's probably always on the somewhere in the topic discussion at the Department of Public Safety.
Well, if he's not armed, he's not that much of a backup. And if he is armed, he's probably going to have to go to the academy to get post certified.
Oh, I'm sure. All right. Any other questions? Comments? And we want to see, so basically we're talking, and we've only got a number of sections on here. So the other part of this was the annexation piece where, so if we're looking at VPSO coming on the list here to take over the number 2 or the number 1 spot for the medium priorities, then where and how would we implement the annexation piece?
in place of the broadband internet capability. Haven't we heard several times that that's gonna
Oh,
be?
that's not going anywhere. I can't even run my
Bump it
business right now.
down.
That's not getting dropped off the list.
Bump it down.
Can the,
That makes me angry every time we even talk about internet. Or
Exactly.
any of it.
Mr. Mayor, can we somehow combine the two small beautification and the marketing? Can that become like a one thing as a small, and the broadband can become another small to keep it on there if we wanted to throw in the annexation in a medium? I mean, I don't really know what the two of these are.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
as far as the annexation goes, I think we need to know a lot more about what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, what's involved with doing it before we assign a priority to it. We have not voted to do it. We voted to study about doing it, as I understand it.
I think that's the point, is to put it on our priorities to look into it.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna take some time. And basically this document gives directive for them to allocate resource time to doing that. And I agree. Yeah, we've got a ways to go on that. So, I mean, it should be on here somewhere just to make sure that we're getting the answers that we need to be able to make the decisions in the future. So, yeah, I mean, I think we could combine a couple things here. We could, I mean, Rachel, do you have any suggestions on that? I mean, on what, you guys have been talking about this and what it's going to take to, come up with some of the information and do a little bit of the research and stuff.
You bet. I think Councilmember Swick had a great suggestion of changing or combining the marketing and small town charm priorities. So council could instead say for small priority 1, retaining and promoting Soldovia's small town charm. And so then that's a way of demonstrating to the community that it's not just beautification efforts, but also marketing and public outreach and partnerships with the Soldovia Chamber of Commerce. And then you could move broadband down to whichever position you want. I would assume number 1 of a small priority, because at this point there isn't something significant that we're facing yet when it comes to broadband. And then you could put annexation in that spot.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable to me.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I hate to revisit the VPSO, but I guess the one thing that keeps bothering me about that is, has anybody really talked to Klain to see what his thoughts are? I know that he's requested additional assistance and feels that he needs additional assistance. And I'm concerned that, I think that should be a priority as well, if he feels this would help him. And I'd like to at least show him that support.
Absolutely. Through the mayor, Councilmember Kennedy, I have talked with Chief Hawkins on this a few times, and he has supported VPSO coming to Soldovia as a way to help him manage all of the requests for service and questions and comments he receives.
Okay. So I guess my thoughts is they probably both need to be on there.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I think we're on a good run here. I think combining the marketing, the beautification is a good idea. And remember, I guess I have to remind myself that these are information gathering right now. The VPSO is information gathering. Annexation is information gathering. And as long as we have it in our priorities, it means it gets priority over something else. And this is our blueprint of where we're going. So I would agree with, if the council is everyone's in favor of putting annexation in the research of the VPSO, I am in agreement of putting it on our priorities so we can actually have a place to do something with. I think the suggestion our city manager had was a great one, and I would be in favor of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I think generally I'm hearing consensus that we can get, make some small tweaks, get both of them on the list here. And obviously, I mean, just about everything that's on the list here has made some sort of good traction this year. So, and I think that's important to recognize. So some have been like the lump, for example, that's fantastic. And that is, now can be off of that list now that we've got an ongoing thing that'll just need maintenance every year. But yeah, it obviously takes a lot of work to get stuff implemented, but once it's implemented and it's part of the process, much easier to maintain than to create something from nothing. So, all right. Unless there's any other comments, I'd like to go to the public on this to see if anyone from the public would like to weigh in on the 2022 council priorities and any possible amendments where we're at right now.
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We can go ahead and bring it back to council then. And if we've got someone that wants to make a motion to go ahead and make a couple amendments to this, we can do that. Just one
And-
simple synopsis. Go ahead, Rachel.
And Mayor, just before that, so it was recommended we can make improve broadband internet capability, small priority number 1, and then make secure a village public safety officer, medium priority number 1, and then make medium priority number 3, evaluate annexation of Mountain Brooks Heights subdivision.
So you want to consolidate 1 and 2 in the small priority list.
And that too. Sorry, that as well. So that'll be
Move the
small number
third
2.
to first and then add the 2. So everything in the third line is going to scooch over.
Correct.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a motion?
Yep, you bet. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to consolidate the first and second priorities of the small priorities. Move those to the second. Move the improvement of the broadband internet capability to the first small priority. I would like to add the addition of a VPSO to this third.
Medium priority number 1. So it's replacing the land
priority
use
number
management
1.
plan.
And then we're moving the land use over and we're adding
Oh,
annexation.
You can check that land use off your list. So that's coming off. You're
Perfect.
done.
Moved.
Then we're removing land use management plan and we're adding the research
Annexation.
for the annexation.
Yep. And that'll be number 3 under medium.
Correct.
Eric Campbell,
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I second that.
Okay. All right. We have a long motion by Harmony, and I will not repeat that. And she did get it correct. And second by Kennedy. Any further discussion on that before we vote on the council 2022 priorities with amendments? Okay, hearing no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote on the changes to the plan. All those in favor, Nathan,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick,
Aye.
Peyton.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0. Let's go ahead and take 5 minutes, quick break, and then we can come back and discuss harbor parking. We about ready to start back up whenever you guys are?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think, if everybody wants to take their seat, we could get ready momentarily. Okay, Mr. Mayor, it looks like we're ready when you are.
All right, We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And this will be item M2, discussion on harbor parking. This will be found on page 74 of your packet, and we'll let the city manager take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna find that in the packet so I can share my screen and just go over this again with the council. All right, so included in your packet, starting on page 74, is a presentation that was given September of last year regarding parking fees within the city of Soldovia. So it went over the benefits of charging parking fees, consequences associated with paid parking, and even proposed an idea called the Small Boat Harbor Parking Benefit District. And after thinking this through with staff and sitting on this topic more, I think creating a parking district is a little ambitious at this time. But I did put together a PowerPoint presentation, just a couple slides to show what parking is like in Soldovia right now. Okay. So, in speaking about harbor parking, and on this map here, you can see the harbor master's office. The area in this black box here, in code, that's designated as short-term parking, and it splits short-term parking into two different ways. It says May 1st through September 1st. It's 48-hour parking, so you can park for 48 hours in that area. And then September 2nd through April 30th of the year, parking can't exceed 14 days. And then it goes on to say things like campers, motorhomes, travel trailers, they are prohibited from parking there. So that's short-term parking. This section is 30-day parking. So technically we don't have per code long-term parking that exceeds 30 days in this area of Soldovia. In fact, this area is also supposed to serve as secondary day parking. So if we're having an overflow of short-term parking, people are supposed to be able to have space here. I did not see code that addressed this lot specifically in terms of parking. So that is something that the council can consider expanding upon. But for now, this is what we have in the harbor area. And code again states that for primary and secondary parking, for day parking, motorhomes, campers, and trailers, they have to use the lot the city currently has in contract with the ferry for, and there can't be any overnight there. So if a mobile home, or not a mobile home, if an RV wants to park for the day, technically they should not be parking at the harbor. They should be parking closer to the fuel and lube building. This is where code says long-term parking is supposed to take place. This is the small boat yard, and here's the large boat yard here, storage yard here. So this is the area that code has designated for long-term parking. So again, giving this overview of parking in Soldovia, particularly as it relates to the harbor, this is the situation that we have right now. So in thinking through for the discussion this evening, to simplify the process of parking for the harbor, at least for 30-day parking, which is the parking that's nearest to the Gateway Pavilion and the kiosks, council can approve setting a fee for 30-day parking and require users to get a parking pass. So you can allow it to be on a month basis, or we can say 30-day parking, but the user can renew their parking pass. Parking passes would be granted only from May through October to charge people to use the lot for 30-day parking because of snow maintenance needs. So we don't want to sell passes for long-term parking if Public Works and Maintenance are going to need to push snow in that area. So a conservative time frame for managing 30-day parking is to have it occur from May through October. The 30-day parking passes are distributed on a first come, first served basis. And in talking about capacity, because we wouldn't want to oversell long-term parking passes, when looking at the averages that Diane compiled for the city from all of the data that the harbor master's office collected last year, it seems that 18 is the average, the highest average of long-term parking lot users or 30-day parking lot users at the harbor. So if we started with 20 passes, 20, 30-day passes, that'd be a good start to make sure we have the capacity for that. And users would pay for a 30-day parking pass at the harbor master's office or the city office. So this isn't in our fee schedule, but this is a recommendation to address this area here. Long-term parking, which is the small boat storage yard area, we would need to amend the fee schedule to add a long-term parking fee. So this is currently what we have in the fee schedule right now for this area. We talk about non-boat storage, which includes tents to cover boats, but it would be prudent, I think, for the council to consider adding vehicles and establishing a long-term parking fee for vehicles for this area. So that is what I have for the council this evening for discussion, and happy to hear any of your feedback.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. All right, we'll open it up to council for discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Well, I'm pleased to see this is at our table again. Yeah, going back, the question that we have about why are we talking about parking? And most of us look at the harbor parking and think our number one priority is revenue at our budget. And in that, we talk about lost revenue. So for me, that's why this is important to me. I think if you read the ordinance that we have on the books right now, we're not following it. We actually, I don't know if anybody registers with the harbor master in lots 5 and 6, block 10, which are the ones by the kiosks. I think the sooner the better that we start charging people for the stay. So what you've written down so far, Rachel, is 30-day parking permits. What are we doing for the 1 day, 2 day, and the paved area of the harbor? I mean, the way I look at it, my issue is that we have a lot of people who are right now, some of those cars have been there for a week, that are using it for a private parking lot. And really the parking area, the paved parking has always been in the past, basically for people that are either down working on their boats or 1 day they're out doing something. When I asked the harbor master, and she actually gave me different information that she uses as opposed to what's on our ordinance. She said the paved area is a day or 24 hour, and the not paved is a 2 weeks. So we've got discrepancies here that we're working with. So I think the paved area over by the harbor master has always been, like I said, people working on their boats, people actually using the harbor for a purpose, not going to Homer and then to Anchorage, being gone for weeks at a time or whatever it might be, or just using it for a private parking lot. And the other part that we have a lot of usage down there, I believe, is with the commercial business that SVT has with the ferry service. They've got private parking on city property. And I know we don't have free parking in Homer. We don't have free parking in Seward. And so that's what this is all about, coming up with how to grab lost revenue. But I'm kind of on my soapbox right now. I would really like to see this go into effect this summer. We've already missed the month of June, and we've been talking about this for far too long. And I don't think it needs to be complicated. I just think we need to move forward with rates. I'll let that go for right now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
I am with the Queen of Kings 100%.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm gonna jump in and be the stubborn child here and say that I don't really care what comes before me. I'm not gonna vote for paid parking. I understand there's an issue I feel like it's not as bad as it used to be. A couple years ago, it was terrible trying to find anywhere to park. For $2,000, it's just, you're gonna piss a bunch of people off. You got it on here somewhere why we shouldn't do it. Trying to track people down to buy permits, to pay their fees, they're not gonna want to. And then what, we take them to collections for $200? No, and that's gonna cost us so much money. People are gonna park elsewhere on the street. They park across the street. They're gonna park over at SVT. We're just gonna create different issues in different places. And then it says we're looking at street parking, paying for that. Who's going to enforce that? Where is he going to tow vehicles? Are we going to tow vehicles who are parked on the street because they don't want to pay their tickets? I don't like it. I don't feel like that's what we are. I do like the idea of maybe encouraging or promoting the long-term in the boat storage. I know it's out of the way, but these people I'm thinking of one person in particular now that I know is parked over there that would probably leave their truck if they knew. I didn't know that was supposed to be long-term parking. If we could clean it up and promote it and have it be more of an area that looks like that. I'm sure people would use it, just like, the airport's kind of out of the way, but people use that even when they're not flying. I think that's a more reasonable approach to try and make a little money and maybe get some of those cars out of there for these people that are coming. And especially now with the ferry every 2 weeks, these people got to bring their cars over and they're not staying that whole 2 weeks. They're leaving it here because they have to. I just don't think it's going to go over well or be what we expect if we try and do day parking tickets and weekly passes or whatever. You're going to have run into a lot of stubborn people, and it's going to create a lot of problems to try and enforce it.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Who's next?
You can go.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I hate to be, I kind of agree with Jen on this, and I think there are some other opportunities for us to make the same kind of money, but maybe in a more positive, happier light. It might cost us a little bit up front. But we do have, and I get the parking and everything. I was unaware of the long-term parking. I agree that we should probably clean it up and make it available. I just think it's a bad stick in the eye for the city. On a more positive note, there are ways that I see we could make money. For example, I've been going to Homer every Tuesday to see the doctor recently. And one of the things that I've noticed is all the big Class A motorhomes, the folks that travel from the lower 48 to Homer to spend the entire summer on the spit, about 3/4 of them are back. And that money's coming back to Homer, whether it be on private campgrounds or whatever. But I just wonder, for example, the lot between the wash rack and the Sea Otter Center and the added value building, if that lot couldn't be cleaned up and maybe half a dozen Class A motorhome lots, waterfront lots put there so that they could come and spend a week or an overnight or get on the, schedule on and off the ferry and come over here and spend the same type of quality time that they spend in Homer. And I think there's folks out there that would love to come to Seldovia and would have no issue paying the fee. And it wouldn't put us in such a precarious position. And there's other lots as well, like the launch lots that I appreciate the cleanup of the trailers that have been sitting there for months. I see the new signage. I think it's long overdue. It's cleaned it up, right? So maybe we could provide a site or two at each of those lots as well. And give some people who want to travel to Seldovia a place to stay. I don't know. I just think the parking idea is in the wrong direction.
Okay, thank you, John. Bobby or Harmony?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll go. So I used to be an advocate of this when we first started talking about it. But a couple of points I want to make. After seeing the numbers, which I know we've seen before because we've had this before us a time or two, and it's been constantly reevaluated. I just don't think it's worth it. But I do think we might take a look at the long-term parking, charging for long-term parking over at the long-term parking. Just clean that up and make it long-term parking. What John's talking about, I think, is another whole discussion that, we need to have at another time. But the other thing you got to take into consideration is if, and I say if, the Seldovia Bay Ferry gets their dock, then we're not going to have a whole lot of cars parked there at the Harbor Master like we are right now. So we have to take that into consideration because those cars will be parking over there at the ATV or whatever the heck, what ATC building. So anyway, yeah, I just don't think the numbers really support us going through all that stuff that we have to go through to gather up money for the short-term parking. But I do think we need to look at the long-term parking again. So that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you, Bobby. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I'll go if Harmy's not going to say anything.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, excuse me. I'm looking at the revenues that we're talking about, possibly $6,000 or $5,000. And that $6,000 or $5,000, we could turn that around and start paying back the kiosks that borrowed from our permanent fund. I just look at it as lost revenue. And I don't think it's a big problem. I think people out the road would probably like to contribute to the city of Seldovia by paying a bit of a fee. I think we can have a summer rate, we can have a winter rate. Our fishermen, our people that come and use our harbor, they won't have to charge them during the winter. Why would we charge them? What I'm really after is the tourist trade or the people who live out the road who use the city. And by gosh, I think they would like to contribute. This is one way that they could contribute. And you go to the Homer Airport and you go over there, you grab a ticket, you put your check inside, you put it in a little drop box, you pay whatever it is, $10 a day or whatever it is to park there. I don't think people are going to be so upset. Will our locals be upset? We need to consider, our fishermen, should we be charging them? No, we need to look at it. Do we have people that are parking down here all winter? Yes, they need to be long-term. Do we have any of these people who are checking in with the harbor master and tell him, oh, I'm going to stay here for 2 weeks? No, no one's doing that. It's a free-for-all. And to me, it's not that big of a deal to actually ask people to contribute and pay. People who live across the bay, they park here all summer long because it's convenient. Would they pay a few bucks? Probably, because they have a vehicle. I just feel like we are trying to find revenue the best way that we can instead of asking the households in Seldovia to pay for everything when we're having lost revenue. $5,000, $4,000, it just becomes part of our chief of police's job. It becomes part of our harbor master's job to do a walkthrough and make sure. Other places do it. I don't know why we think that people be so upset and not be willing to contribute to the citizens of Seldovia instead of the households in Seldovia trying to cover everything. I'll go with what council says, but I think we're missing our mark on this. And I believe we need to work with our ordinances, and people that are parking down there all winter should be paying someplace else or take it to their property. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
Yeah, we hashed over this time and time and time again. We put out, actually, I think we even went to the citizenry and tried to solicit ideas. I think we got response from the citizens saying that this was they talked about lost revenue. $6,000 is nothing to sneeze at. Even $2,000 is not an insignificant amount. This just seems like a no-brainer to me. And again, we hashed it over so many times. I think everybody's changed their mind about 3 times. I'd still support this.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay, thank you, George. Go ahead, Harmony.
I wrote down a note in anticipation of Jen's statements, which I did not bring. But Ms. Rojas has basically said everything that needs to be said as far as in support of this. I do think that our community needs to invest in the infrastructure that it has. We cannot continue to raise taxes on the households that live within the small confines of the city limits. We do, as Vivian has said, have many people who come through the community during the summer months who aren't affected in the same way. There are people who pay property taxes, and but I think the revenue is a small piece towards taking a small step towards fiscal responsibility and reinvesting in the infrastructure that currently exists. It's crumbling. It's crumbling in front of us, and we can't afford to not take each little step forward to maintain what we have. I agree that our fishermen who make their livelihoods out of that harbor, who live and deal with some of the worst pieces of our infrastructure, don't need to be charged for it, nickel and dimed for every time they come up down the ramp. I do disagree with closing down the long-term parking lot for the whole winter season too. I know that we have people who park there, who come and go out of the dock, who volunteer in our community and are an important part of our community, and should have the right to park their vehicle. I think that the maintenance staff could come up with an allocated area that's a throughway for snow disposal and still allow for a reasonable amount of winter parking. Small numbers, it's all pennies. We live in a puddle, and we're not getting the same amounts of revenue and bodies and foot traffic that somebody like Homer gets. But it's still a step forward that I think that we should take. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. I'll just chime in here with my 2 cents after listening to everybody. I'm definitely not in favor of any short-term fees. If it's basically under 48 hours, I just say leave it alone. That goes for anywhere. I'm not in favor of any on-street parking fees, none of that stuff. That's asking for a nightmare. I am in favor definitely of getting the long-term lot cleaned up, the one down at the end, and then making that available. The trailer lot, I think that should be a 30-day pass. I think the 30-day lot should be a 30-day pass. And basically you simplify that by saying if you're parked for more than, pick a number, 24 hours, 48 hours. If you're parked for more than that, you got to get a 30-day pass to park in those lots. Simple as that. Leave all the short-term parking alone, because that's going to be chaos. That's pretty much it. And I think that would have a shot at getting implemented fairly quickly, and satisfy what we're trying to do here without pissing a bunch of people off. And I think it would meet the intent of what we're looking for. I mean, people that are just parking their cars and leaving them and not turning those spaces over, homesteading them, and we're not getting anything out of it. So, and yeah, if it's 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, I would love to see that money either going down to pay off debt or putting it back into harbor floats, painting new numbers down there. I can't even read the numbers on the float system, for crying out loud. They're terrible. After the first season, we could buy all new numbers down there. There's lots of little projects we could do with this money. It's not just going to line the coffers, because there's no coffers to be lined. It's going to improve our infrastructure is what it's going to. So that's my 2 cents. So I mean, there may, I can count, and there may or may not be enough votes here to do something. So we'd have to come up with something that would be a compromise here. But I think let's see if there's anyone from the
you a
public that wants to
tiebreaker?
weigh in. Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, and if I'm not overstepping, my mind is spinning out right now, and I'm having some inspiration from this conversation with my familiarity with the code and the fee schedule.
Mhm.
And I think with what you said and what we've heard tonight, that there's a possibility that we could present something in the very short future, possibly the next meeting, that includes in the fee schedule about long-term parking, because the long-term parking for trailers and boats is across all city properties. So you'd include that function of long-term parking for vehicles across all city properties, but also that there is a discount for mortgage users. So maybe there's a way to incorporate that mortgage users don't pay or have a discounted pay. And we incorporate that into the language, into the fee schedule. And then, of course, bring back any language that needs to be brought up in the code, and just have a more comprehensive plan to present with those language changes in both documents.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like that approach based on what you've heard here tonight. I definitely think there could be a compromise. And you've got a pretty good handle on the code, Heidi. So, if you thought it would be relatively, I know it's gonna take a little bit of work, but if you thought you could get that something cleaned up, and then basically a draft for us to discuss and possibly, we'd have to get it, I guess we'd have to get it introduced and then, and get it passed. But yeah, I think you're right. We need something that's tangible, that we can look at, that clearly spells it out here.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I'd like to see not just the fishermen benefit from the waiver of the fee schedules, but also the annual residents of Seldovia inside the city limits. If you're going to go after travelers and the seasonal folks, that's a little different story. But I wouldn't be in favor of any additional fees for current full-time residents.
So what about the people that park their car there all summer, that live here just to park it there?
They can register and we can deal with the locals on an individual basis. They can still fill out the same registration.
Well, are we gonna charge them, or we gotta have something? We can't just nilly-willy it. We gotta have something in our code.
Get that. Let's see what she can come up with, is what I'm thinking.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
I would disagree with that Mr. Kennedy just said about no charges on anyone who lives within the city limits, because really, if you're going to park there for a month or 6 or 3 weeks or something, you can just as easily leave your car at home and walk down to the harbor. So I think the fishermen are trying to make a living. That's one thing, but people who just live in town and leave their car there for X amount of time, they should either take their car home or pay. So I think there's some things that we need to look at. And I do think our city clerk has got a pretty good handle of tonight's discussion to make it fair for all. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Heidi, if you can bring that back in some sort of draft form, I think that would be good. Yeah, I know this isn't going to be as simple as we all think it is, because obviously there's split opinions, right down the middle here on how this should go. So, all right, let's see if there's anyone from the public that wants to weigh in on this.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there is a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay.
You can hear me okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yep, loud and clear, Laurel.
All right, thank you. One of the things that I think is lacking in the conversation is actual data versus people's anecdotal data of what they think that they're observing. So being a maybe a seagull's eye on the parking lot, and Vivian has an eagle eye on the parking lot. My take is not that there's residents who are just leaving their car there to park because it's a new place for them to park, because it's not a new place for them to park. We know without a doubt that people start picking up the parking in there. I'm talking like the 30-day. In the 30-day lot, it picks up in April, especially with the influx of the state ferry. And then somewhere around October, it dwindles back down again. And you've got your regular abusers, users that park in there. So the beat up vans and trucks, and I got a flat in my tire and I can't, I haven't bothered to move it. So you have those kind of things, but why on earth would a local take their car down to park here when they've parked it all year long at somewhere else? So I don't think that's a fair assessment. But man, could you imagine if the city had data on who actually is parking and why they're parking via just a simple survey that takes place? But just reminding you that this whole conversation, when it happened before, Layla said specifically, you are looking at man hours increasing. And so if you're raising $6,000 in fees, where are you paying for the increase in man hours? So please consider that. But I just want to say, when you're talking about locals, whether or not they're accessing their private sports fishing boat or their private commercial fishing boat, or whether they are accessing commercial transport, I think that your locals are fully aware that those parking lots fill up and are cognizant of that. And I will give an example of a local 83-year-old who had to go to Homer today, and they were dropped off for a 7:30 in the morning boat ride, and then they were picked up when they return. And when they have to go for an extended period of time, they don't ever park their car in the harbor paved lot. They do park it in the 30-day. So I would much rather see, if our problem is how people are parking, one, do we actually know the data on what the actual problem is? And two, what have we done to change that? Because if once again, we are looking at more fees on the back of our community, then no, please stop. Please stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Heidi, anyone else from the public that wishes to speak?
I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council. And this was just a discussion item tonight. So we've obviously heard a number of mixed comments, ideas, etc. So, and I know, in response to Laurel's comments, I know we've had, there was some data that was collected. It's in our packet here. There was June averages, July and August averages, and I don't recall if this was, last year or the year before. And these were only collected. It was just a snapshot in time of what was, what was observed. So, the idea is, I guess in my mind, is not to make this, if something gets implemented, is to not make it complicated at all. Simply the harbor master is gonna be the ones to, or the city to issue the 30-day passes. The biggest bulk of the problem, I believe, would be any short term. That's why I'm adamantly opposed to that. Long term, it's passes, and then if there's someone noticing that someone's been parked there for 2 weeks and they don't have a pass, then call Clay. He comes down and does his thing, and that's it. I don't think this is accurate for the amount of time that Clay's going to have to do added, to his duties, or the harbor master is going to have to do to their duties. That's just my opinion. So the simpler you keep it, the less cost you have. So, all right. So is everyone good with having the city clerk take a look at our current fee schedule and the current code language, and then we'll bring something back to look at, and then have a little more little more in-depth discussion, or we'll have something a little more tangible to talk about perhaps at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Yeah, I'd
All right.
support that as well.
All right. Thank you, George.
Yes,
Okay.
I am too.
Yep. Bobby, you're in support.
Yes,
Okay. Any objection from anyone else? Going
I'm
that route?
opposed. I'm
What's that?
opposed.
Okay. All right. Well, you're outnumbered tonight, so let's go ahead, Heidi. Then at the next meeting, we'll go ahead and bring that back, something that we can look at, and then at least we'll have something to discuss a little more detail. Okay, that's enough of the parking for tonight. Let's move on. Item M3, discussion on Jackaloff Bay Dock filing a lease application. This is found on page 91. And Rachel, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So as the mayor said, there's a memo in your packet regarding an application to lease the Jackaloff Bay Dock uplands. So previously, the city was under the impression that we could not submit an application to lease the uplands based on feedback we received from the state. But we did get another email, and that is on page 94 in your packet, just reaffirming the statement I'm about to make, that the city can, in fact, submit an application to lease all or a portion of the uplands of Jackaloff Bay Dock. And I'm just going to share my screen here to show again the extent of the current uplands. So this is the state parcel that's leased by a private entity. And so this is currently what is being considered either for a renewal of lease or purchase by the current tenant. And so the city, according to the state, can submit an application to lease all of this. Or here's a suggestion of something I just put together of a portion of that uplands lease that the city could instead pursue with the state. I was just looking at boundaries here of, where the road comes in, as well as where the dock is, and current parking. So in the memo put together, there was a few questions that I need the council's feedback on. First question being, would the council like the city to submit an application to lease the uplands? If so, what area would the council like the city to submit a request to lease? And what would the proposed use of an activity on state land be? So those are three big questions. Question number 3 about proposed use. I've included comments that the council has made in the past. Access to the public facility, Jackaloff Bay Dock, and Porta Potty being a top consideration for the lease of the uplands, as well as having a booth or covered area that would allow personnel to manage user fees for the dock. Parking and storage, as well as economic development opportunities, including the establishment of a maintained campground. So those are just things that the council has said in the past. And below in the memo is an idea of how that could take place within this suggested boundary of the uplands, if council would like to move forward with that. And so in the packet as well, so you can see why these are important considerations, is the application for purchase of lease of state land. And it's pretty extensive, not just asking like what land and, where it's located, but, what is the proposed use of an activity of it, a description of any improvements that you want to put on it, and so forth. So the feedback that council gives me either this evening, or we could delay this conversation to another meeting, will be crucial in filling out that application. So also included in the packet, while I have this shared screen feature on, it's on page 97. You can see a survey just showing access from Jackaloff Bay Road, That access is 60 feet wide, and then it's 40 feet wide as it comes down to the dock. And then on page 98 in your packet, let's see here if I can fix that, is a more clear depiction of the road as well as the access easement that goes down to the dock. So looking forward to hearing from the council on those questions and more. Thank you so much.
Rachel, I have a quick question for you. On the map that you showed where you had the black lines drawn, the part of that's Tidelands, right? I mean, isn't that part of the dock is on there's a Tidelands lease and there's an Uplands portion.
Absolutely, yes. And the city has received early entry authorization that is in place so that we could get this appraised. And the state is basically in agreement that the city can have I believe it's a 30-year term lease for this portion. So I'm just showing it in a way that justifies why this part of the Uplands here. Oh, sorry, I have my shared screen feature off.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where is it the yellow line that separates the two?
Yes, so this is the
Okay.
Tidelands here.
Yep.
And I just wanted to give council context of why this could be a consideration for the section of uplands that are requested to be leased by the city to the state. So just to show like a complete box, but yeah, this technically the city is in position to lease from the state.
Okay, well, just looking at it here, if we were gonna do it, it doesn't really make much sense to go up that goes up the hill there when you go to the south, and then when you come back closer to Jackaloff Bay Road there, you do have, like I see people camping over there in this where you don't have it highlighted at the base of that hill with the rest of that beach and stuff. For a time there was, that's where they would haul some of the wrecks out of there. Yeah, just north of your cursor there, just a tiny little bit there. And then, there was some of the garbage was cleaned up, and now I see people, camp over there and stuff. I mean, I would be inclined to pretty much get that whole section if we were going to try to do that, just so we could, have it if we're going to do it, or do like we talked about, and then, try to incorporate this as the one big package for either a vendor or something in the future. Then at least it's all under one control, and you don't have any kind of a little loophole there, with a little piece of no man's land there. So I think everything from the road, from the coming down, basically all that in that area there. Yep. So that's my opinion, but let's go ahead and open it up to council for anyone that wants to comment on this.
Mayor
Mr. Mayor.
Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
I think we ought to try to obtain both leases in the entirety, just in the ability that we could clean it up. And not have any, I would agree with you, not have any no man's lands there. I'm not so much worried about the stuff across the road, but everything on the bay side, I think would be in our best interest to obtain.
Okay, thank you, John. Vivian?
So I guess the question I have, if the state is willing to let people who fill out the application actually choose what they would like, actually break it off and not have to take the whole piece as is. And
Through the mayor,
then,
correct.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you were asking a question, Councilman
Yes,
Rojas. Yes, that's true, or correct. The state says we can submit an application for all or a portion.
Okay, great. And do we have any idea what costs we're talking about?
I believe the current tenant pays under 2,000 a year, I believe, but I would have to look at in my notes to confirm that.
Right, are we talking about a lease or a purchase?
This would be for a lease.
Okay, and I would imagine the state of Alaska from 45 years ago or 1960, whenever you got that number is going to change, I would guess. So I'd be curious what kind of amount we're talking about. And we can apply for it and see, because it would make a better package if we got somebody to take on the whole Jackaloff thing. I still don't know if I see the city of Seldovia taking this on. and being a part of that whole infrastructure and running a campground or leasing out a campground. That's a big picture to take on. But is it more attractive to somebody else? Probably. If we got the lease, if we actually got it, and we changed our mind, we could always have a refusal, I would imagine. But for right now, to fill out the application will put us in a better position for in the future if somebody was actually interested in taking on this whole picture. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rojas, I'm assuming so. That would be something that we would need to put in our application. I'm thinking is if we did lease the lands, just making sure that we would have the ability to sublease or have a separate tenant with the city that could have site control. And I just looked up the case file from the state on this parcel, and it looks like the annual rent went from $692 to a little over $1,039 as of November 2013, and it's set for reappraisal at the end of November of this year.
And that price was per year or month? I didn't quite catch what you said.
Per year.
Per year, yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, George.
are we bidding against the current lessee? Or is he just not going to seek to renew?
Through the mayor, the current tenant has applied to purchase the land. And so the state is currently evaluating their application to do that. And so if that indeed is something that the state decides not to do, the current lease for the parcel is over November of this year. And so the current tenant can apply for a preference right to release the uplands, but that doesn't stop the city from also being able to submit an application so that the decision is made by the state.
So then we would be bidding in competition with the current occupant. If he elects to apply to renew his lease, we would have to bid higher than.
Through the mayor, no bid. It's just filing an application for the state's consideration. So they'll go with whoever they think is most appropriate to be the leaseholder of this area. So we're not bidding against, we're just filing another application for the state's consideration.
In our case, I think we're looking at this as in the best interest of the public to have control of this, to be able to clean this up and, provide something that is meaningful to all the local area citizens and citizens around Kachemak Bay to be able to transit, through that area. So yeah, it's just like an RFP. We got to put something together that makes sense, and then the state would have to evaluate it.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep,
Just
go ahead, Harmony.
I'd just like to agree with you on the extension of the application to include the pie piece here to the north. Is it north? I don't think it's north. Yeah, the south side. I don't think that we need to go up the hill. That's a pretty steep incline. It flattens out there, and why take on extra risk? But that little pie piece, on the, not across the road, just on the beach there. Yeah, for all the reasons that have already been stated, that it is currently being used as a as a campground, just for people who are, transient, which could create, like weird, there's a fire ban on, and, I don't know. I think that if we're gonna control the access, that we may as well just seek to have that whole bit there on the beach. And then that way, as it's already been stated, it's a more attractive parcel if we did sublease it. Have we been in contact with Crystal about, is SVT at all interested, or SNA, either entity at all interested in this conversation?
Through the mayor, I have spoken to President Collier about this topic and the conversation. There's definitely interest in having a conversation with the city on this topic.
Okay. Well, even just as a city or pursuing a private I think we should move forward with this application. And I like your conservative approach on the lease, but dream big, Rachel.
Thank you, Councilmember Peyton. And another idea is because council has expressed interest in if the city were able to get an uplands lease for this area, having a maintained campground. So then if council wanted to, you could go for the full thing and then develop this into parking so that people come down to the dock, drop off their things, and then can leave their car up here long term. So that's another option too. And Councilmember Peyton hit the nail on the head. In my opinion, I'm just thinking about risk and liability and abandoned vehicles and what can the city, I don't want the city to bite off more than it can chew, but if we dream big and have someone that subleases or manages the site, that could be an option as well. So this is great feedback. Please keep giving me more.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I will give more. I am a little confused, so please clarify stuff for me. It was my understanding the yellow is the lease the shades have currently, correct? Okay, so am I dreaming, or was it somewhere that you said we couldn't apply for
There's an email correspondence in here. Right,
no, I thought you said at another meeting that we could not apply for that lease because they had the first option to renew the lease or buy. Was that correct?
Yes, through the mayor, Councilmember Sweat, you're correct. And then the state
Okay.
got back in touch and said that they,
So why all of a sudden did that happen? Being the pessimist that I am,
Well,
I think there's something hinky, and I don't know why the state would consider another application for a lease if they have gone forward with trying to buy it. So anyway,
Can I add right on to that? Is
oh
the
yeah, I see
option
that, but
to
why?
submit a lease, does that only open up once they've made the decision on the buying? Or can we fill this out tomorrow and put it in and we just wait and see what happens down the road? You understand my question?
just because I'm thinking about what two council members said. So through the mayor, Councilmember Swig, I think that what you said is both apply. So I think that yes, the state right now is considering a sale. If they elect not to pursue a sale, then they'll consider a lease. There'll be, I'm assuming, multiple applications for a lease, and they'll have to vet and decide what organization or entity they want to lease the uplands to. In response to Councilmember Sweat, the state initially said no, and then they had internal discussions as they were evaluating the uplands and realized, well, we discussed this internally, and actually the city could file an application, because if the state, there currently isn't an application filed at the state right now to lease the uplands. There's only an application to purchase. So then if the state decides that that's not the option they want to pursue, then they'll look at applications for leases, and then they can decide what is based on state statute and history, what would be the next entity or the current entity to lease the uplands. So I think they just had an internal change on first telling the city no, and then realizing actually the city could still submit an application.
Mr. Mayor,
yep, go ahead, George.
I just have a couple of quick questions. What would be the term of the lease if we went along with that? Or if we were successful in leasing it, and is there a charge for us to apply?
Through the mayor, yes, there is a charge to apply, and you can request based on your status. And I'm trying to see where that is here in the instructions, but you can request either a waiver or something regarding the fee to apply. In terms of the term, that would be something that we would also want to come up with. You know, does the city want to file for a 30-year lease or a 55-year lease. I think that's up for negotiation based on the council's feedback.
But I wouldn't think it'd make much sense for a short-term lease here. If we're going to do this, we would not want to have to refight this battle every 10 years or whatever. And what is the fee to apply? It's got to be cheap, exactly. I don't see what we're waiting for.
It says on the application, which is page 100 of the packet, non-refundable application fee. See current director's order for applicable fees. Fee may be waived according to this statute. So I'm not sure what the exact dollar amount is, but there is a fee.
Well, it says it can be waived, so.
Yeah, I imagine.
Based on-
worst
Based
case-
on what I've heard here, I don't know what we're waiting for. It costs very little or nothing to apply. And once we applied, we're in position to wait and see what happens. And if it's feasible for us, I mean, how much it costs. I mean, the worst thing could happen, we'd lose our application fee.
Right. So general consensus or feedback that I've gotten from the council is that there would be interest in seeing the city apply to lease the uplands. I'm still unclear if you want to just lease what's below the road basically, or if you want the full parcel. So that would be helpful feedback, as well as what uses you would want. And then at the July 11th meeting, I could bring forward the application completed so council can say, yes, this meets the intent of what we're looking for, just to make sure we're all on the same page, because I want us to submit to the state what we actually want to see happen versus have to change it later on or something like that.
Eric Campbell.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
After listening to everybody's comments, I think we ought to just try to lease the entire uplands as it is, because it might benefit us as a subleasee to sublease it with more available for whatever their dream or vision is. And also, we could choose not to sublease the upper part, but yet have control to clean it up or to keep it clean. You know, there's all types of options, but I think it would just be cleaner to request a lease for the entire amount and move forward.
I have a quick question.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
Would there be an added cost to the state if we were to submit for a piece of the parcel instead of the entire parcel? Are they gonna have to subdivide? Would that potentially be like a strike against us?
That's exactly what I was concerned about is, you know, there might be surveying fees and other things that might not be attractive to the state in that situation. That's why I'm saying we should just apply for the entire thing.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, George.
at the very least, we'd have to survey. And that costs a bunch of money. No two ways about it. Yeah. And the lease now is like $1,000 a year. Well, if they double that, it's still not a whole lot of money. I mean, we could pay for that with our parking fees.
I knew that was.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it makes sense to just leave it as is and go for the, as it's currently drawn. That keeps it clean and simple.
With Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
So we're looking for a lease that includes the existing parcel, that allows for the addition of some sort of small structure for some sort of staff. And camping availability and parking, right? Is that what we're looking for? I don't want to make another law.
Well, at this time, sorry, Mayor Campbell, and
Nope.
Councilmember Payton, council doesn't have to make a motion now. It's just getting general consensus that there's interest. And then we can bring back to council at your next meeting the completed application for additional feedback. And then that could be tweaked a little bit more depending on what council would like to see. So then there would be the motion to pursue filing it with the state.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, go ahead, George.
one more fast question. Would a 99-year lease be feasible? I mean, could we do that?
Through the mayor, I don't know. I can ask the state though.
Uh,
Yeah, this application says max 55, so, but yeah, you'd have to ask.
Okay, even that's not too bad. Imagine a resort hotel. Man, think about it. It's a beautiful spot. We don't build a damn thing. We sublease to an entity.
It's definitely a consideration you can bring before the body.
And there's lots of property around here that is leased 99 years from the Native Corp.
All right, I think we're hearing some consensus on that. We're going to move forward on this. Let's see, does anyone from the public want to weigh in on this, Heidi?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll bring it back to council then. Unless I hear any opposition, then I think the direction is to go ahead and move forward with this. Put the lease together, the packet, and then bring it back at the next available meeting for further discussion, and then we can start formalizing this.
That sounds good to me, Mayor. And I guess if I were to ask just one last question, if the council is interested in the entire parcel, would you want to see an application developed that makes that whole uplands area basically a maintained campground, and then that upper triangle portion parking, long-term parking?
That's Mayor Campbell.
Yeah, I was just thinking whatever we do to not get ourselves, locked into a box. I mean, if you have to check a box, but I wouldn't offer a ton of specifics. I mean, there's things need to be allowed to change, obviously, and I'm sure they could within the lease, but yeah, general terms.
Could we just say uses in support of our dock?
Yeah, and you could say i.e., I mean, camping, parking, whatever, but I wouldn't specify specific locations within that.
Yeah.
The application though requires a site plan or a development plan. So that's why we can state that this, let me pull up the shared screen feature again.
Yeah, I was trying to find that.
Mayor Campbell.
Yep, go ahead, John.
I would agree with, we want to limit our verbiage, but the plan could include things like camping sites, possible parking, that type of verbiage.
Yeah, I think just allowing us some optional flexibility.
Right. That's exactly what I was thinking when I said we need to do the entire lease, is because if we do make some camping sites down there, the parking below is pretty limited, and it's also affected by the tides. There has been some flooding at times, and so that area across the road we may need it for parking.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is just make this area camping and parking, and possibly this triangle up here as parking and storage and camping as well. So just kind of say that the entire area could be used, and then come up with a site plan that meets that intent, which council can tweak at the next meeting.
Support of the entire facility and operation of,
the Tidelands, yeah.
the Tidelands lease. Right.
Okay.
All
Sounds
right.
good to me. Thank
I
you.
like it. All right, let's close this out with the manager's report. That's item N, and that'll be found on page 108.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I was just pulling it up here. Go through this as quick as I can. So please make sure to mark your calendars for this Sunday. It's the city's Key to the City event and celebration of the municipal milestone of turning 60 this year as a first-class city. Mayor Campbell will be facilitating the event. It's at 2:30, and we received confirmation that Senator Murkowski will be in attendance, which is great. And speaking of Senator Murkowski, I wanted to share with the council that on Friday, I received an update from her staff that out of the 5 congressionally directed spending requests that we submitted to her office, she has forwarded to the Appropriations Committee 2 of them, which is a huge success. I mean, to put that in context, I believe the city of Homer got 1 of theirs, and there's communities that have had 1. So just the fact that Soldovia got 2 is great. We received in her funding request full funding support for what we submitted to her office, which was the Block Street sewer main, working to fix that. It was a $746,000 request that she's submitted on to the committee for consideration. And so the city will have to come up with a 20% match, but that's 746 would be a direct amount of money that we would receive for that project if the committee forwarded her recommendation, as well as $414,000 to work on our raw water transmission line. So we were able to replace one section of the line, but the other section still has thin walled steel. So that project was also something that she selected to forward on for consideration, which is a huge success for Soldovia. So I'm hoping it's something that we can thank her for, because she's the Appropriations Committee chair. And Senator Sullivan compliments her efforts. He ran on a platform where he doesn't support appropriations, congressionally directed spending requests, but he's helpful in other ways. So we did share that with Senator Sullivan's office, which transitions to the next manager's report item, that the regional director visited Soldovia. And it was a great meeting with Elena Spraker between the city and SVT to go over community-wide projects and opportunities that Soldovia is facing. So she's hoping that Senator Sullivan can make a visit to Soldovia next year. And then Governor Dunleavy's Kenai Peninsula liaison, Jill Schaefer, will be visiting in August. She was supposed to come on that meeting last week, but was unable to. So she'll be here in August. So then we'll have federal delegation as well as the governor's office, very familiar with Soldovia and the capital projects we're working on, and community-wide projects that the city can support SVT or vice versa on. A big thing that I wanted to bring before the council is that the borough is considering the land sale and is making steps towards securing an appraisal of the lots after getting opinion from the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District of what city parcels out of the 3 that we proposed they'd be most interested in securing. So that'll require an appraisal and other documents, but I'm hoping that's going to come before the Borough Assembly and the Soldovia City Council in September. And on top of that, during those discussions, the borough is having an auction in August and said that the city could put our 1 waterfront lot for sale through that auction, which would be of benefit to the city, because then we'd get more exposure to increase the purchase price of that lot. So at the July 11th meeting, I'm going to bring that topic to do sale by auction for that lot up for council's consideration, because we need to get the paperwork going for that. But I think that would be a really good move for the city to expand exposure and increase competition for that lot. A couple weeks ago, Councilmember Swick, the harbor master, and I, along with Tyler Tucker of DOT, the current tenants of the Uplands and Alaska DNR, met up at Jackaloff Bay Dock. It was, as we touched on earlier, a application that was filed by the current tenant to purchase the land. So the state was just doing research and evaluating their request. And that current lease that they have, again, expires in November. Something that is unfortunate and occurred through a misunderstanding of a grant application process is that the state funding, which is the main source of funding for our senior meals program, is on hold. The funding for the program in FY22 was automatically awarded to the city through a non-competitive process. So staff were under the impression the same thing would occur for FY23, and it was competitive, which means that the state right now is evaluating all the applications they received for state funding for the senior meals program. And if there's money left over, then they can consider Soldovia. But there is a chance that we may have to suspend the senior meals program for this year based on that administrative glitch. The current funding for the program, we have the boroughs grant. So I'm hoping that the borough grant will cover the expenses for the first 2 to 3 months of FY23, so July through September of the senior meals program. And then the state at that point will have figured out how much funding they could provide the program for this year so that there won't be a disruption, but there's a chance for that. And our finance officer is working on another grant in the meantime that could provide shelf-stable food products and fresh produce to participants. So we wouldn't be making hot meals, but we'd still be giving people food. So we're trying to come up with solutions to that unfortunate mishap there. Let's see here. There's information about the borough increasing the senior meals budget for communities, information provided by the finance officer on the deficit that she had commented on in a previous finance report. Results of the surplus sale, we shared that we made over $7,000, and staff input on that was that it would be great for the next sale that it happens in the fall, like August. So that way we can do an inventory before the snow arrives. Yet there's still community members present to participate in the sale, but overall it was a really big success. We've received more payroll or personnel liabilities from SURSA for operating the SOC. So the finance officer was able to work on that. Net cleaning in the Seldovia Small Boat Harbor. The city continues to uphold the policy that net cleaning is not a permitted activity in the harbor. And the harbor master had been working with users to provide options for ways net cleaning can occur. And so far, users have been able to find alternate locations for this practice. So still continuing on with no net cleaning. There's one user of the Gateway kiosk. Property tax revenue updates. So our budget was based on a preliminary assessment tax roll. And we didn't get the final numbers till after our budget was passed. And so the assessment roll decreased. Initially, they told us the preliminary figures were a little over 43 million and the certified final values were 42,400,000, give or take. And so that doesn't have an impact on our budget necessarily because we forecasted we'd bring in a little over 310,000 for this fiscal year, assuming that we wouldn't make 2% of that property tax revenue in the current fiscal year because some people miss payments or delay payments or set up payment plans. So it doesn't impact our budget if everyone makes their payments this fiscal year, if that makes sense. And then the same thing, I'm talking about the budget. We developed it prior to receiving updated figures from our insurance companies. So our AMLJIA insurance went up, as well as marine liability insurance. The primary reason why our general liability insurance through AMLJIA went up is because we added to our property schedule the fuel and lube building, because that's a city building that wasn't formally insured. So now it is insured by the city, as well as the marine liability insurance that increased, I believe, just because of national trends with marine infrastructure. Our safety officer helped the city receive a $3,800 discount on our general liability insurance by building a culture of safety amongst staff. So by ensuring that staff have monthly safety meetings, including 4 central types of trainings, including slips, trips, and falls, ergonomics, and I can't recall what the other 2 are. Because she has worked so hard at that, the city received a $3,800 discount through our insurance company's loss control incentive program. So please tell her thank you. That's not 5% discount, that's a 3% discount, but I'm hoping for the next fiscal year we can receive the full 5%. The farmers market gave us their schedule. They're going to be in the Gateway Pavilion once a week on Saturdays from 10 to 2. And then there's more information from Alicia Chartier in the manager's report for that. The borough mill rate did go down by 0.2 mils. So before it was 4.7, now it's 4.5. So that's helping property owners in the Kenai Peninsula borough. The borough road maintenance funding was awarded to Red Mountain LLC for doing road maintenance on borough roads. The Red Mountain LLC, which is a subsidiary of Seldovia Native Association, was awarded a $148,000 contract for doing winter and summer road maintenance in the borough. The city of Kenai was awarded a no-cost contract to remove hard rock from our landfill and use that for their bluff stabilization project. So the borough had to expand our landfill anyway. So that's a win-win for the borough as well as the city of Kenai. I had a meeting last week about drought potential in Soldovia. I know we were talking about it earlier, but there's basically a 1 in 50 chance that we could experience a drought like we had in 2019. And I'll share those slides with council at the next meeting. DOT gave us information about the maintenance that they're going to be doing at the airport. So there's more information in there. The insurance risk discussion that council wants to have, that'll happen either the second meeting in July or first meeting in August. So that's in regards to community events and insurance for working with community partners on those events. And then lastly, there's some photos in the manager's report, but that familiarization event that the Soldovia Village Tribe and Chamber put on together was a huge success. It was great to see Mayor Campbell addressing all the participants from Homer, both the Homer Chamber of Commerce and City of Homer, about Soldovia, specifically trying to get the message across that we're not just a day visit community. You should really spend the night here. And so trying to bridge the gap literally across Kachemak Bay of getting Homer people to understand Soldovia more. So I had a lot of fun with the City of Homer crew showing them our lift stations. The public works director was there. So she said that the lift station by the slough is one of the deepest she's ever seen. And just giving them more context so that when Soldovia reaches out to the City of Homer for help or recommendations or just opinions of how we can do things, they have a better understanding of the city of Soldovia. Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate all that. And yeah, obviously we had that, just another comment on that our fam trip, we did that at the SVT Conference Center, and we had a fantastic turnout. Weather was incredible. And, you know, I did remind them all that it's like that every day in Soldovia. So they, yeah, it was a good event. And I think it was long overdue. So that opened a lot of people's eyes that hadn't been to Soldovia in a long time and saw that yeah, things are on the uptick, and we're trying hard to showcase our community. So that was good. We made a lot of good contacts. So, all right. Any other questions or comments for the manager on her report?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say she did a super job on the report. Tons of information and good things happening for Soldovia. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I just want to make a quick comment. I'd like to also thank Slough Sue for helping me getting the kiosks all dolled up. I like that word. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. All right. Let's see. Item Q, informational items not requiring action. The city, Soldovia City Office will be closed Monday, July 4th, 2022, in observance of Independence Day. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Nathan.
Mayor, let's come back to Councilmember Nathan.
Oh, okay. Sweat.
Thanks to the staff for all their hard work as usual.
Okay, Rojas.
Just thanks to everyone for all your hard work. Thank you.
Okay, Kennedy.
Nothing additional this evening. Thank you.
Okay, Swick.
If anyone wants to flip pancakes on the 4th, I think Jamie is looking for help downstairs. Starts bright and early at 5:30.
Yikes.
Peyton.
I don't have anything to add tonight.
Okay, and Nathan.
Well, as long as we've been fighting about parking, I wonder if we might look into trying to set up some sort of a parking arrangement in Homer. The state has been looking for somebody to run a parking operation where the old free lot used to be, across the street from the air taxi offices. One other thing, Rachel, I saw an email from you about the salvage sales at Jaber, and that's a non-thing. We no.
Through the mayor, they said that they want to know what we're looking for. So if there is a surplus sale or something in the future, they can keep us in mind if there's a particular item. So I did let them know a flatbed truck would be helpful. And if there's any other items, then we'll send that to J-Bear. But I know that was an idea that you had to help the city get equipment and vehicles here. And it sounds like there's nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you checking on that.
You bet.
All right, thank you, George. Yep, I'll just say thanks to everyone that participated tonight from the public, and then thanks for the discussion and the staff, obviously for all the reports and all the prep work that went in tonight's meeting. Next meeting will be a regular meeting held on July 11th, 2022 at 6 p.m. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a second? All right, any objection? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you,
We'll
everyone.
see you Monday or Sunday, July 3rd.
Yep.
Hope you
see
can
you
make it.
Okay, good night,
Okay,
everyone.
have a good night, everyone.